Disciple of Christ podcast. You guys are about to meet Steve and Tamara Bryner on a beautiful, beautiful end of summer day right here in Sandy, Utah. I want to welcome onto the Disciple of Christ podcast, the Bryners, Steve and Tamara Bryner. And it's interesting that I get to be able to invite you onto the podcast, even though you've invited me into your home. It's quite lovely. It's like it's right out of a Deseret Book Christmas card. That's what it's like.
That was the point. That was what we were going for.
Let's do a little bit of this. You and Steve, you and I met each other a little bit more than a year ago.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about kind of the journey that led to us knowing one another. And I met you around that same time, just because y'all come in a package of two, I think. Yeah. In a pack of two. That's very, very nice. Let's do a little bit of this. We're going to start with, how should we start this? Give a little bit of explanation of who you are, where you're at now, not necessarily just in a physical resume type format.
I'll let you go first.
Okay.
That's going to make Tamara do.
Where we are right now.
Just physically. We don't have to get into the spiritual journey yet.
Okay,
just kind of help people understand.
Physically, here we are. We're in Sandy, Utah. And
is Sandy a name or an adjective?
Oh, boy.
Geez,
could be
Louise,
both.
Did I just blow your mind? We are in Sandy.
Could it be named Sandy because it is sandy? Sandy soil. Anyway.
Possible.
We built our house upon the sand.
Oh, no!
Okay, we're here in Sandy, Utah. And I was actually born here. Well, we're not going to get into that yet, are we? Do you want to get into...
Give the 30-second version. Born and
raised in Sandy, Utah. I haven't lived here for my whole life. I did live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've lived in Holiday, Utah, but we're back here. We're back here in Sandy.
Okay, and lifelong member of the church.
Lifelong member of the church.
Boom.
Yeah.
Tamara, were you born in Utah?
I was not. I was born in El Paso, Texas.
Okay, see, she doesn't have the same bubble that she was born in. Yeah. So very good for you.
We moved a lot, but lived most of my life in Arizona, down in like the Mesa, Gilbert area, down there outside of Phoenix.
I'm not willing to believe you were born in Texas unless I hear some sort of accent. Can you give us anything?
Man.
How y'all do? How old were you when you moved away from Texas?
I was, I think I was still a baby.
Okay.
My parents divorced when I was around 5 or 6. And after, my timeline is kind of all mixed up in my head. But at some point after the divorce, we went and moved back and lived with my grandma and grandpa in El Paso. So I lived there for about a year or so.
Okay. We'll forgive you for the lack of accent. How long have you been in Utah?
I moved here, when I was 19, about to turn 20. So, yeah, maybe 16 years.
Okay. It starts to happen. I remember when I moved away from Utah for a while, I realized that I missed it because I was in California for a while, not realizing yet that California was on its way to full-blown communism. Well, let's start digging into this little bit. We'll start with Steve. And feel free to go back and forth, share experiences that happened. What do you remember about your upbringing? What is that you would say helped you form?
My upbringing. Well, like I said, I was born, I have two good parents. Mike and Annette Brynner are their names. And if I could share a story, my parents were having problems. They could not get pregnant. And so they went and got a blessing from Spencer W. Kimball, from the president of the church at the time. And shortly after then, they became pregnant with me. And my mom has a very strong testimony, President Kimball, because of that. And so I was born 1977 and born in Sandy. I did have two very good parents, and they're still very good parents to this day. I love them very much. And I had a good upbringing. I lived in a good home, had a good family.
Active in Scouts?
Active in Scouts,
I always like to ask that one just because I have so many fond memories of Scouts. It brings out the pyromaniac in all of us.
Yeah, I was an Eagle Scout. My mom got my Eagle Scout for me. Thank you, Mom. Yeah, I actually got my Eagle Scout. But.
Tamara, what do you remember? What would you say were some of the most formative things before the whole teenage years for you in the growing up? Was it in Texas more? Was it somewhere else?
Probably in Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah. Arizona.
You're used to the heat, whether it's Texas heat or the dry heat of Arizona.
Yeah, you think you would get used to it. some things are just, it's just too hot.
Do either of you know where Indio, California is?
No.
It's one of the hot spots of the nation. It's the Palm Springs Valley, and we're talking summers that hit 120, and sometimes stay there.
That's Arizona.
And I lived there for a decade. Every single summer, I would say to myself, I thought I would remember how hot it gets. You never get used to it. You just learn how to deal with it. Yep. And Tamara, raised in the church.
Yes. Yeah. Raised in the church.
Singing in the primary and everything.
Yeah. I mean, we did have some spots of an activity, but always testimony of Jesus Christ and prayer and
Yeah. In other words, would both of you describe it as, hey, you had a solid traditional Mormon upbringing?
I did for the most part. I don't think Tamara would say that. I did. I mean,
share with it how yours deviates.
Trying to think what to say. So yeah, like I mentioned, my parents are divorced, and I guess I bring that up because that's really, I guess, where my memory starts. That's like where life kind of.
Yeah,
they divorced when you were age 4, right?
I think I was around 5. See my timeline.
Yeah,
I think I was around 5. Yeah, so I don't really remember before that. So
it's specific.
That's kind of my starting point.
It's understandable that something like that would be like, boom, a demarcation time, especially at age 4.
Yeah, and shortly after that, my mom remarried, and she remarried someone who wasn't a member of the church, and I don't think a part of any religion, as far as I know, but I loved him. He was great, but there was
most of the time,
yeah. He drank a lot, and there was some domestic violence, and
I'm guessing that was probably associated with the drinking.
Yes, yeah, and just tempers would fly, and so not traditional. Sometimes I'd go to church and feel like, wow, these other kids have not experienced what I've experienced, so feel a little different in that sense.
Did you sometimes felt like the project in your young women's classes?
Yeah,
right?
I was sometimes. I was the one they'd come knock on the door. Are you coming to Mutual?
Kind of like extra reaching out. Let's be extra nice without saying what we're concerned about.
Yeah, and we were the ones where the families would pick us for like 12 days of Christmas and do that, which was great.
Okay, so you did interpret it as a positive things, but it sounds like it stuck out to where we're on a list for extra care.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely talked about in ward council meeting.
Yeah.
She grew up. They moved. She has a really interesting story. They moved a lot. I mean, sometimes 3 or 4 times in a year. And her stepdad did have a piece of property. She grew up in the middle of the desert, like literally in the middle of the desert.
Did you catch lizards?
No running water. Yeah, no running water. They had to truck their water in. Lived in a pump house. I'm telling your story a little bit.
That's okay. You're better.
But she
that's why we keep them around.
Her bed was one of those lawn chairs with the corrugated stripes, with the vinyl striping, the lawn chairs.
Yes.
That was her bed. She slept in a pump house with the scorpions. And
so let me ask, because something like that, as adults, we like to go back and reminisce. How did you view it at the time, and how is it different now? That sort of like constantly moving, not a regular sort of bed that are considered my kid's bed.
Oh man. There were parts of it that I absolutely loved. Like, this is so awesome. Like, I could go out and catch. I was kind of, tomboy. I'd go catch lizards and snakes. We'd go out and shoot guns. My stepdad, I love. I have a lot of really good memories with him. There's bad, but there's also good.
It's amazing how kids can like just soak in the experiences with positivity, because there aren't the same sort of expectations of, I need this standard of living that we tend to develop later.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. I was always running around barefoot. And,
very nice. As you look back at it now, is it the same sort of fondness?
I don't know. Like I said, there's some memories that, I have really good ones, but as an adult, I wouldn't want to go back and relive it.
Did stepdad go to church with you guys typically?
He went a few times. I remember him going a few times with us.
Like a few times in a year, or just or a few times over the course of years?
Yeah, like maybe over the course of years, yeah.
How would it soak in when we're from primary on up and then getting into teenage years? There's a lot of focus on eternal family, and that's that is the be-all, end-all, to where to exit this life successfully, it's going to be a family sealed in the temple. How would you interpret that sort of vision that's pushed by the church?
Yeah. From my view when I was, I don't know what.
Yeah, from your view, when you were a little girl.
When you were a little girl. Say, at the time, because it's easy to look around and we say, oh, it looks like they're a perfect Mormon family. Look at the bishop's family or look at so-and-so's family. And it looks like, man, once they all die, they're all going to be reunited. I can't imagine, because I went through a divorce when I was in my 20s, and it hurts. Even as a young adult, going through that, feeling like my concept of eternal progression just got shattered. As you would learn that sort of mindset of family sealed in the temple, and yours wasn't that sort of model, how would you interpret it?
Yeah. As a kid, I was just like, well, things will work out. Because my mom and dad, it wasn't a friendly divorce. They never, they didn't get along very well.
How many siblings?
I have an older brother and an older sister, and then I have a half brother who came from the second
So you
marriage.
were the youngest of the siblings when the divorce happened?
Yeah, the original. I was the youngest. And so, I don't know. I couldn't really see my mom and dad together, but like after, I just knew, well, it'll work out. Like,
good.
It'll work out.
And that felt right.
Yeah.
Good. Let me ask you this. In your younger days, preteen days, did anything happen where you simply felt a closeness to your Heavenly Father? Did you feel like, were you saying prayers on your own? And I asked that because I got a little 8-year-old who's just starting to do that on his own quite sincerely. Do you remember any of that growing up, or was it more like the traditions of the household?
Yeah. No, I had times where I would pray on my own and I felt like I had gotten an answer. And like I did. I knew my Heavenly Father and my Savior were there. Like I knew. And, as I got older in teenage years, I started getting into some deep depression. And I had like a powerful experience for me where, I basically, I was just, I was going to counseling. I was going to counseling. I was doing, medication. It wasn't helping. And just like, I can't overcome this. I can't beat this. And just crying out to the Lord, like just crying out to him, like, I can't do this. Like, I need your help. Whatever you need me to do, like whatever you want, just help me. And he did help me. And I can't remember the specific how it happened, but I do remember one point where, I was in hell. Like it was horrible. I was just completely weighed down. And, I cried out to him and suddenly, I don't know how it happened, but I had like 2 weeks where it was like, I was free. Like I was happy. I felt light.
Teenage years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Around 14, 15. And it was a miracle. And then after that 2 weeks, it kind of slowly started coming back, those feelings, but never again for the rest of my life. It never came back like it had been, like never that overwhelming. And I knew that was from my Heavenly Father. Like
you
that
saw
wasn't me.
You saw the hand of the Lord touch your life personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Her mom really has a strong testimony of prayer, and
Yes.
that was very, very heavily emphasized in her household growing up, prayer.
Yes.
What was it like, little Steve, gaining a testimony? Would you say that you gained a testimony prior to your teenage years? Any actions to where you felt a connection with your Maker?
Growing up in my home, so prayer was never really heavily emphasized in my home. Leadership in the church, following leadership, that was very, very heavily emphasized. You follow the prophet. In fact, in our family home evening, we didn't really have family home evenings very often. But when we did, sometimes we'd go through spurts where we'd have them for a few months and then we'd stop. And every single family home evening that we ever had, the song generally that was sang, occasionally it was "Give Said the Little Stream," But usually it was our latter-day prophets are number 1, Joseph Smith, then Brigham Young, John Taylor came next. We know, then Wilford Lorenzo Snow, Joseph Smith. Remember anyway.
So it worked.
Yeah,
they got you to memorize it.
I've got them memorized to this day. And leadership, not only or following leadership, not only the prophets, but also ward leadership was very, very heavily emphasized. You support your leaders, you sustain your leaders. And that was a lot of my childhood.
So it sounds like the religion taught to you as a children was primarily focused on the hierarchical structure of the church rather than Jesus Christ. Is that going too far for me to say it that way?
Well, Jesus Christ was, we had pictures of Jesus Christ, but I always associated Jesus Christ with the church. Scripture study was not emphasized at all in my household ever. Prayer was not. We did pray as a family very, very sporadically and very occasionally. But yeah, I would say growing up, that hierarchical, hierarchical leadership was the thing that was emphasized in my home growing up.
And now take us up to, did you feel a desire to be a missionary as you're getting close to that age where young Mormon men in Utah go off?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I felt that really strongly. Before that, I lived in the mission field. We moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin when I was 12 years old, from when I was 12 to 16, and that was really, really a good experience for me. I was the only one. There was one other member in my entire school, high school.
And how big was the school? Hundreds or 1,000 plus?
Yeah, hundreds. I don't know exactly how many. I was, but that was a really good experience.
I do like the Wisconsin accent. It rivals the Texan accent.
Yeah, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, don't you know? Yeah, it sounds, it's very nice.
That was it. The Packers, that's a religion back there. Mm-hmm. And I still like the Packers to this day. I came back. We moved back to Utah when I was 16, and we moved to Holiday. I finished high school. And yes, it was just kind of go on a mission. That was just kind of what it was. I knew that if I wanted to start my life off well, that I needed to go on a mission. And so that's what I did. And I wanted to learn another language. And so I put on the little application, I even remember it said, how successful do you think you will be at learning another language? And would you like to learn another language? And you had to rate yourself between 0 and 10. And I put 10 on both of them.
There we go.
Yeah, I got called to
overly confident.
Yeah, I got called to Argentina. That's the shirt. And
that's nice.
I loved my mission. Loved my mission so much.
The Argentines sure do like their beef.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So you go out there in the mission field. Did anything happen that was a culture shock?
Seeing the amount of poverty that exists in the world, I had no idea. I had no idea that 10 people or 15 people could live in a room the size of this room with dirt floors and virtually nothing. They didn't have locks on their doors. They had it was nothing. They had nothing to their names, and they lived happy. They lived a lot happier than we live here, and that was interesting. I saw some of the poorest. I saw the poorest conditions that would just make you cry. Just poverty. So that was a culture shock.
It's easy for us to take for granted.
Yeah,
what we have here.
Yeah.
As you hear the description, Tamara, because it sounds like you've got fondness of the lizard catching barefoot days.
Yeah.
Sounds like it was very different.
Yeah. It was very different. But, even though we had some crazy dysfunctional times, like Steve was saying, my mom had a very, very strong testimony in prayer, and she was always very careful to point out when she had received an answer to prayer and, okay, now we need to pray and give thanks. And so that was always very much a part of growing up. And I kind of got to have two separate upbringings almost. I had, so my mom, who I lived with, I always stayed with my mom growing up. So I had that experience. And then I also had my dad, who he eventually remarried, and they were very strong in the church. Like, we went every Sunday and family home evening and scripture study. And
was it like a 50-50 split?
I think I lived with my mom. I was with my mom a lot more, and I go to my dad's like on the weekends or every other weekends half the summer. switch holidays. And yeah.
Oh, at what point would you recognize that you started to gain a testimony on your own? You had intervention that you recognized in your teenage years. How did you feel yourself develop in a spiritual level in the years after that?
Yeah, I think, that experience that I shared when I was around 14 or 15, that was when I feel like I really had like a sure testimony like there. And
a sure testimony of what?
A sure testimony
Jesus Christ?
of Jesus Christ. Yeah, a sure testimony of Jesus Christ. And that's when I began to develop my testimony of the scriptures, and I knew that they were true. And
were you reading? I didn't know you were reading the scriptures then.
Yeah, I started. Well, that's when I started going into seminary, and I started reading the scriptures. And
could you memorize all the scriptures they were telling you to?
No, I can't memorize anything. I'm the worst. I don't know. I had a lot of emotions in the church. I had a lot of guilt because, with this different upbringing I had, and there's things that, okay, you do this and this. You got to read your scriptures every day. You got to say your prayers. You got to go to church. You do these things, and a lot of times I didn't want to do those things, or I didn't do them the way that I felt that I was supposed to be doing them. And so it would bring a lot of feelings of guilt and like, oh, I'm never going to measure up. Like, and you read about Abinadi and all these people in the Book of Mormon, and well, I'm never going to measure up to them. Like, how am I going to make it to the celestial kingdom? It's not going to happen for me. So I'm just going to try and be the best person I can. And that's all I can hope for. Because it's just, I'm not going to make it.
Did that bring comfort, or did that make you feel condemned?
I guess in a way it brought a little bit of comfort, but mostly, it's natural. There's no hope for me.
You're making me have flashbacks, just because I remember in my teenage years, like when I repented of some sins and I felt my Heavenly Father intervene in my life. That was the thing that I just couldn't overcome. Is the feeling that I'll never be worthy. Yeah, I'll never be worthy. And it wasn't until I had another moment of hearing the voice of the Lord to where I finally trusted enough to where, hey, the Savior's atonement does apply to me, and salvation through Jesus Christ. I didn't believe it, even though I was like a pretty active missionary and everything. So you're that feeling. I think a lot of people have it. Steve.
Yeah.
Would you say that you entered the mission field as someone with a testimony?
Yeah. I mean, it was very, very weak.
Were you 19?
I was 19. Yeah, I was 19. And I would say I had a testimony of the church, and of the hierarchy, because that's what I was raised with. I think I'd read the Book of Mormon once by the time I went on a mission. I didn't really understand prayer. I didn't have good prayer habits. But I did want to go on a mission. I had a desire to serve, and I wanted to go on a mission, and I knew that's what I wanted. And so that's what I did. And
how did you feel things develop for you spiritually in the mission field? You're seeing people who are living in actual poverty, things that we generally don't witness very much in the United States. How did your testimony, closeness to the Lord, love of the people, how did those things develop?
I came to love, all missionaries say that they love their mission. Well, some don't, but I came to love the people of Argentina. I assume you did too. You went Midwest, right?
Midwest.
Yeah. You
Minnesota.
Minnesota, muy bien.
And it was Spanish-speaking part of it. So I was in Minnesota. It was in the Midwest. It was the South Dakota Rapid City mission, and at 10 months into the mission, boundary change, and I was Iowa, Des Moines mission. But enough about me.
I've been through Iowa, Des Moines. It's got the capital's got that gold top. You've seen it?
Yes. Yeah, it's got that gold dome. Yeah. Quick story. Yeah. So as I'm getting a brand new greenie, as I'm living in Des Moines, getting a brand new greenie, picked him up at the airport, and he's a big guy, and he's kind of quiet. He seems like kind of timid, and here I am, this little energetic guy, getting him all excited, and I'm driving. And so they just barely got the temple finished here in Iowa. And he says, in Iowa? He's like, yeah, we're going to drive past it. And you can see from the freeway this gold dome over there because it's the Capitol building.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, wow. And I think he even pulled out his camera. It's not cell phones like we have these days. He's taking a picture. And then finally I laughed. It's like, that's just the Capitol building. And he told me later he resented me for that.
That's funny. That's great. Anyway, yeah, Argentina.
Did you feel yourself developing spiritually as a result of your missionary service?
Oh, absolutely. Dude, like I said, I loved my mission. I loved it. Like, I came to really read the Book of Mormon. I came to really love the Book of Mormon on my mission. I loved my mission president. I loved him. He has helped me develop spiritually probably more than any single man on the earth today. I mean, I rose up through the ranks, like you do as a missionary, district leader, senior companion, district leader, and then zone leader, and then I was his assistant. So I got to know him. He actually just died recently, a couple weeks ago, of cancer, but I really loved him. His name was Gordon Thomas, and I came to be really close with him, and he is a great, great, awesome teacher. And in addition to that, I mean, the people, as I became closer to the Lord and followed the commandments and things that the Lord was telling me to do, I came to love the people, and almost more so than the converts that I had, I came to love the members. I just loved them. They would give everything for the missionaries. They'd invite us over once a week to eat, and I just came to love them. They were so faithful. I mean, they'd get up Sunday morning at 7:30 in the morning and get up and walk 5 miles to the chapel in order to get there. And you don't see that kind of sacrifice in a place like Salt Lake City. You just don't see it. And they are so dedicated and so firm in their faith, so firm in their testimonies of Jesus Christ and his gospel in the Book of Mormon. And that really helped me grow and see what other people were willing to sacrifice for Jesus Christ.
You feel a love for the people. You see a level of sacrifice. Did you feel yourself growing a love of the scriptures or a greater interest? Did they start to open up at all to you in the mission field in South America?
They did. As far as things like stories about Ammon and the sons of Mosiah, I really, you read the scriptures at different points in your life and you get different things out of them. And Ammon and the sons of Mosiah, the missionary experiences in the scriptures was what I really focused on as a missionary. And that's, I came to really love the Book of Mormon.
Oh, that's wonderful. What led to you meeting this guy?
Oh, man. Well, my mom had remarried a guy who lived up here. And at first I was like, oh, I don't want to go to Utah. So I stayed in Arizona. I moved in with a cousin and helped take care of her kids. And then after about a year of doing that, I had another cousin who reached out to me, and she's like, oh, I'm going to be moving to Utah. Do you want to come be my roommate? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that sounds fun. And I tried.
First time living outside of the home?
Yeah, yeah.
That's step.
Yeah. So I was like, but I was still trying to decide what to do, and I was trying to pray and get an answer. I really wanted a yes or no answer, and I wasn't getting that. And I went to my cousin who I was living with at the time, and I'm like, I'm not really getting a clear answer. And she's like, well, maybe this is just an opportunity where you get to choose. Like, you choose what you feel is right. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Utah. And so I came up here, and my cousin and I moved into an apartment, and we started going to the singles ward. And originally I was like, I'm only going to be here for a year because I'm not going to live in Utah. But we started going to singles ward, and
August of 2003. That's
oh, there we go. This guy knows dates and times.
I know. He's my memory bank.
It's because you're memorable.
And yeah, we met in the singles ward. And
did you like him at first?
I didn't pick him out. He noticed.
So no.
So it sounds like your radar was more active than hers.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say I didn't notice. That sounds really bad. Sorry.
Well, because singles ward in general, for those who know LDS culture, which is the majority of the audience, singles wards in general are primarily for the purpose of how do we get these young people to form relationships and start building Mormon families.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so
and there's a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah.
And we are a success story of that.
Yeah.
And we're very grateful
for it. 3 kiddos now?
3.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit before we get on over the kiddos.
But the first time I noticed it, my cousin was the one who pointed him out. We were at like a family home evening, and
I hear he had a Mustang.
he did. He did get a Mustang, and it was
Was
a lot
that
of fun.
was anything like that important to you? Like,
Oh, I don't care about. No, I don't care about that stuff. But
we had a lot of fun
we
in
did
that
have a
car.
lot
Oh
of
my!
was it a
gosh.
V8?
It was a V8. It was a GT.
There you go.
97.
There's something special about being able to scare your date with the.
Yeah, manual trans. I put a great big stereo in it. We would drive around and just listen to music and sing with the windows down.
Oh,
It
nice. Do you remember which songs?
Was very fun. Oh, we kind of had
Sarah
a couple.
McLachlan.
Yeah,
Sarah
we did
McLachlan
some
building a
things.
mystery. That Mirrorball.
No, that's not the right one. That's not even Sarah McLachlan.
Off of Mirrorball. It was a live album.
We do Fleetwood Mac.
A lot of Fleetwood Mac. Yeah.
Don't
That's what we
stop thinking
Thinking
about
about
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
See, I should have been his date. Come on.
Boston. We listened to some Boston. A lot of classic rock.
Yeah.
Green Day, The Offspring, all that kind of
But I
stuff.
would have been happy in any car. But it
Oh,
was
it was
very
fun.
in a
That car was
Mustang.
so fun.
So, Steve, what was leading up to this time of your life when you met Tamara? So you're back from your mission, and I know from you helping me out, you are a mechanic by trade. What was your level of dedication now to the Babylonian build a paycheck through turning a wrench?
Oh, that was it. I was all in with Babylon. I grew up in my parents. We were very, very poor growing up. We didn't have really much of anything. I lived with my grandparents for a few years, and just very, very poor, and not really the fault of my parents. I love them and I'm grateful for that upbringing. I really am. It taught me a lot. And so, but I never wanted that. I was like, no way, that's not happening to me. Yeah. And so I got home from my mission.
And it's poor by American standards.
Yeah.
In other words, you saw different standards in Argentina, but you realized, hey, I want something more as far as securing financial resources.
Yes, exactly.
And how did you secure those resources?
I wanted security. That's exactly right. I started school. I got home in 1998 from Argentina, and I started school immediately. And I tried some things out for about a year. I tried out biology and engineering, math, and computer science, and I just didn't have the brain for that. I just didn't. I mean, I would look.
Did you feel it was more lack of interest in it, or just it wasn't clicking the way that it would have needed to?
It just wasn't clicking. I didn't really have an interest in anything other than making money. Really, that was my interest.
And engineers make it.
You
mean they learn this stuff? You mean they get paid because they gotta know stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Doctors and engineers, and that's kind of the direction that I was going. Just because. That was kind of the direction that the people in the church go. You know, I mean, you have wealtty You look at all the bishops.
Plus, you're raised, especially with the focus on the hierarchy of the church. And when you get into the quorum of the 12 for at least the past few generations in a row, you have Babylonian resumes. You've got nuclear engineers. You've got university professors. Lawyers. You've got renowned heart surgeons. Yeah. Any single person who rises up into that level inside of the church, they got a Babylonian resume to be envied.
Yeah.
Did you feel that it influencing you at all?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. I was like, this is what I have to do. In fact, the reason we moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin was so my dad could go to dental school, so he could be a DDS. And he did graduate. He never became a dentist, but I felt a lot of pressure. My dad's family, my mom's side of the family one's a doctor. They're all very successful businessmen. My dad's side of the family. They
got extra initials after their last name.
Yeah, my dad's side of the family, all of that, PhDs, doctors. My grandpa was Dr. Ulrich Bryner. He was a very renowned doctor. He started a clinic downtown called Bryner Clinic. So, yeah, I felt a lot of pressure to be successful and to have money.
But it didn't turn you into an engineer or a doctor.
Nope.
Did you ever feel bad about being a wrench turner? Because most people, like the United States in general, does have a lot of respect for the working man, but it does not come with a certain level of prestige. Other countries, they have a lot more respect for, hey, this is the tradesman, and he's the backbone of the economy. United States, at
not
least
so much. The United States.
No. What did you feel about your employment?
I felt good about it. My dad was a mechanic in the Vietnam War. And he was always working on stuff in the garage growing up.
And it's stuff that helps you take lives while preserving your own life.
And let me go back to Salt Lake Community College. I went to Salt Lake, got home, started in Salt Lake Community. Yeah, slick. And I did a year of that and tried out some general ed stuff. Didn't really like it. And so then I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't do this stuff. I can't do biology. I can't do general chemistry. I can't do calculus. I can't do it. It's not in me. And so I was like, well, what do I do? And so I was like, well, I guess I like cars. And, I had some background in that. I took auto mechanics in high school, and I always worked. I worked at the Q Lube, and I worked at Saturn of Salt Lake and before my mission. And so I was like, well, I'll be a mechanic. And so I started taking classes, automotive classes. And I graduated in that, and I got a really good paying job right out of that. I mean, like 2000, like 2.5 years after I got, 2001, 2.5 years after I got home from my mission, I was making $60,000 a year as a single guy. Yeah, as a single guy, and I had enough.
Did you have your own place already, or is this a living with somebody else, with a group of guys?
Well, I was living with my parents until
that's making bank.
Until I got the job until I got that mechanic job at Saturn, and then I bought a condominium in Murray, and that was the singles ward where we met.
Okay.
And that's when I bought the Mustang, and I was like, I'd never seen so much. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe this. I'm a single guy. I'm 23, and I'm making this.
Yeah. Was the drive? Were you feeling the natural drive to where now I got to find a partner and make more of my babies?
That's exactly what I was feeling. Yep, gotta find a wife.
Okay, so how'd she show up on your radar? Because you did not show up on her radar the same way.
Well,
that much is for sure.
The very first time she saw me was, like she said, it was a family home evening, and I was chewing on a styrofoam cup. Okay,
my cousin's all, hey,
this
guy, that guy.
is like, I wonder why he can't do calculus. Is he really chewing on a styrofoam cup?
Chewing on a styrofoam cup.
So we were kind of making fun of him.
Yeah. After that, it was her. God, I don't even know. I saw her in the hallway at church, and I was like, "Oh, these new girls look cute. I want to get to know them." Mm-hmm. And so I actually went on a date with her cousin first, and they were roommates. And
so she could give you the lowdown details. Hey, watch out for her. So, and obviously it didn't work out with the cousins. Y'all aren't polygamous, are you? No. Okay. No. So it didn't work out with the cousin.
Yeah, and really, the cousin was kind of my same age, and Tamara is 6 years younger than me. So that's why I was like, I can't. I was 25, and she was actually 18 when we met. And
it's funny how that's a world of difference at that young an age, because 6 years of difference a decade later doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. But yeah, when you're that age, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot date her. She's just too young. And
I feel like I need to hire a babysitter.
And yeah, well, not that much, but we got to know each other at a family home evening. We went bowling one night, and that's where we kind of, we're thrust into each other's presence and just had to be together. And after that, it was her birthday party, and I went to her birthday party and had a really good time. She told me she was cracking me up, man. She was telling me all these absolutely hilarious stories of growing up in the middle of the desert in Arizona.
This is the barefoot lizard catching.
All of that.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, funny stuff. Yeah.
And what sense did you get as she's describing those conditions? Was she describing it with fondness?
Yeah. It was hilarious, man. I was crying. It was laughing so hard. It was so funny. Yeah.
I grew up on a little part of the time on this little hill in the backwoods of a redneck town in Oregon with my BB gun hunting snakes and catching salamanders. There's something special about development when you get those experiences. So good. That's why she stuck out to you, Steve.
Yep.
Hey, I hear a story about all of a sudden Steve has determined something about balloons in large numbers. Can you tell me that, Tamara? Share with me from your perspective. Did you recognize that he was thinking about popping the question, buying a ring, or anything else? What was happening leading up to that?
Yeah, I think we had talked about it a little bit, and so I kind of knew it was coming. We talked. We'd done rings and talked about that.
How did it seem to you? And how did it seem to family members, the idea of Steve might be popping the question?
Oh, man. Well,
it was bad news.
It didn't go over. There was concerns that
he the styrofoam cup chewer?
Like, why is this older guy? Why isn't he married yet? And why is he?
How old are you? You're what, 25?
I was 25.
You're 25, and to think that in Mormon culture, it's being pressured on you.
Yeah.
Is he defective? He's
Like,
25 and not
something's wrong
married.
with him.
What's wrong?
And yeah, so he was a little older than I was. There was some concern about his
Profession?
Yeah.
How is he going to provide for a family?
Like I love my dad so much, and I think he's a little, because I didn't grow up with him.
And it is understandable to see our young precious daughter.
Yeah.
Are we doing our due diligence to get her to consider what she's getting into?
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's kind of funny because my sister, she had gotten married like maybe a year before we did. I can't remember, but
A couple of years.
Yeah,
they had a kid.
a couple of years. And so I was like, oh, when you guys were getting married, like, did he like call dad or something? And he's like, oh yeah. And he called dad, and dad was just like, well, do you love her? Well, you have my blessing, kind of. And I'm like, and I'm like, you can call my dad and do that. And I understand why my dad did it. I totally get it. But like, so Steve called, and it turned into like this hour or more.
Did you feel like you were getting interviewed, grilled? What was it?
Oh, I was getting grilled. Yeah.
Oh, good.
And
I felt so bad.
And how did you respond to that grilling?
I wanted to marry his daughter, so I just kind of went with it. I didn't,
Excuse me, sir. I have fireworks that I can't control happening in my heart and mind.
Yeah, that. And we do have a good relationship with, his name is Dan. Mm-hmm. Dan, and
this is the stepdad or dad?
This is the dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, both names are Dan.
Yeah, Dan, the stepdad, and
she's like, that was probably your mom's dating preference. I don't want to learn a new name or mess it up, so let's just find another name.
We can talk about the detail. We can talk about what happened, but I do want everybody to know, if they're watching this, I don't know if they are, or if they will, but it is really good today.
Yeah.
I mean, they have fully accepted me and love me, and I feel welcome in their home, and but it did not feel like that in the beginning.
Yeah.
But
there was a vetting process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did he pop the question?
I was on my way home from work, and we actually passed each other on my way home.
Did you honk and wave?
Yeah, and I pulled into a parking lot because I saw him kind of turn in there, and I thought, oh, we're going to meet up in here. And it was close to our house, and he wasn't coming, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I just went home, and I get home, and I open the door, and there's music playing on the radio.
Is this mom and dad's house?
No, this is my apartment.
That's right.
Yeah,
with your cousin, roommates with your cousin.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I walk up to the door, and there's a note on the door that says, what did it say? It said, like, the real ring is inside.
Is in there somewhere.
Is in there somewhere, yeah. And I open the door, and it's just full of balloons, and I just thought it
like
was...
all the way up to your head or knee level?
Yeah, up to my head.
Louise, that is a lot of dirty breath from you.
Yeah. Well, we had a compressor. We had 3 people.
Okay,
roommate.
I was going to say, because you better brush your teeth before filling up that many balloons. Otherwise, it's going to be awful when they pop.
And I just thought it was so cool, and I was freaking out. I loved it. And there were some of the balloons had like a little ring in it, and so I was going through and finding
one of those fake little rings.
Yeah, and they were fake, and you could tell. And so I'm going through and finding balloons, and then I get to about the middle of the room, and he emerges
hidden in the balloons. Jeez, Louise, could you be more of a stalker? This is what they were worried about.
I was on my knee. There we go.
Yeah. And then he asked me, Miriam, and I said yes, and there were tears and kisses, and it was great.
And so you said yes.
Yes.
Oh, geez, Louise, goodness gracious. And the family were like, okay, because he did already call your dad by that point.
Yeah.
It's totally happening. Yeah. And so now y'all got 3 kids. Mm-hmm. What are the ages now?
12, 10, and 6.
One of them's about to be a teenager.
Yeah.
He's not too far away before he's going to be filling up a room full of balloons and chasing a young lady and all. And so let me ask you this. We're going to turn this into 2 parts.
Okay.
At least into 2 parts, unless we really get on a roll. We'll do a part number 3. As a family, how did you guys feel as a now a young married family? Dedication to following the Lord. Did it feel more like following the Lord, or did it feel like being active in the church?
Being active in the church.
Being active in the church. Yeah, absolutely.
And why do you recognize it that way?
Well, we recognize it now that way. Before, when we got married, it was like, we have to get married in the temple. That was absolute. And, well, that was, we had to get married in the temple. We did get married in the Bountiful Temple, May 5th, 2005, 5/5 of 05, if you didn't get
Oh,
that.
there we go.
5/5
We had to
of
pick a
05.
date that I could remember.
So that's a good one.
Cinco de Mayo. So, and sometimes we do forget, and then we always remember that it is on Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
There's always celebrations going on.
Because Argentina also has Cinco de Mayo.
25 de Mayo in
Oh,
Argentina.
they've got Cinco de Mayo. U.S. has it. So does Africa. I think every country in the world has Cinco
really?
de Mayo. They've also got the 4th of July. There we go. There's my joke. I hope you
That's
enjoy
funny. That's funny, Jacob.
it. Go chew your styrofoam cup.
Okay.
So was there, at what point, and this might be the lead-up question to our second part, was there a point that individually or collectively you started to recognize something missing spiritually?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes is the answer to that question. Do you want to do that in part 2, or do you want to keep
we're
going?
We're gonna bring this part 1 to an end right now. So you guys have gotten, those who are tuning in, you've gotten a lot of insight into the sweet Bryners and what led to them uniting together as a family. Part 2 is going to be focused a lot on the spiritual journey, the circumstances that we find ourselves in Utah, in the United States, and throughout the world, and kind of what your journey has been and how you view it going forward.
Very good.
Tune into part 2.
Part 2. Here we come.
Thank